This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Well, Ukraine and Russia are not the only headlines of late. In all 50 states, we see a move from courageous lawmakers at the state level and some at the federal level, even at the city level, to make sure that we have fairness in our sports and competitions, namely, specifically, particularly when we see female sports and men who identify as transgender, bisexual, or whatever their proclivity that they deem they are connected to, then they compete in a female sport. And of course that changes the competitive nature and the balance and the fairness and all those things. And so for those that stand up, like State Senator from Matsu and Anchorage, Shelley Hughes has done, Republican, who had the courage to sponsor and lead the charge for Senate Bill 140 to say, hey, we're going to ban transgender girls from, which is a gentleman, from female sports in Alaska. The fact that you did this, Senator Hughes, Shelley, is great, but I'm sure there's been a gauntlet and it's not been easy. Welcome to the show. It's nice to have you back on again. And give us an update. What was the impetus behind sponsoring the bill, and how has the effort been through the journey of, I think, one committee of referral?
Thank you for having me, Tom. And this bill isn't about banning a certain population. It's about ensuring another population isn't disadvantaged and discriminated against, that being girls and women. And when you set it up against the backdrop of the horrific things occurring in Ukraine, it might seem rather petty, but I want to say that good common sense in the United States, good common sense legislation like this, is part of who we are as America, and it's important to the thread of who we are as a nation to make sure that we can stand up in the world and set the example for other countries and help retain the balance of power for good. So I'm just connecting what might seem like more trivial matter to what's happening on a larger scale. We need Americans, we need to take back America in many ways. And this kind of legislation is bringing common sense people together. And I am happy to report I'm even having Democrats and people who you might not otherwise would think would support this. They're coming and quietly telling me this is the right thing to do. They do not want their daughters, their nieces or granddaughters, disadvantaged. And the great thing, Tom, is that Title IX, passed 50 years ago, has been upheld in court, even in the Ninth Circuit. Even in the Ninth Circuit, there was a case where guys wanted to play on an all-girls volleyball team, and the school district was allowed to keep those young men off and say this can be for all girls. And the reason is we are allowed, when there is a physical attribute that makes a difference, to, I guess you would maybe say, discriminate, because even in employment law, and as far as right to privacy, also in equal protection, in employment law, you cannot discriminate against someone for their beliefs if they consider themselves a transgender individual. You can't. But for physical attributes, there can be requirements. So if someone is hiring someone to work at a warehouse, they need that person to be able to lift 50 pounds over their head. They can discriminate against someone who can't do that. A flight attendant has to be have certain physical abilities to be able to function in the event of an accident, or an emergency on an aircraft. So we do allow the physical fitness to be a factor. And so it is for Title IX. So even after testosterone suppression therapy, multiple years, the male-bodied athlete still has significant advantages over a female-bodied athlete. And for that reason, there is a legal underpinning to allow separate sex sports. And so my bill, just really quickly, and then I'll take a breath so you can respond. It would in Alaska would require there to be that only female-bodied athletes could participate in sports designated for girls and women, and that would be both all the way through the public schools and our universities. And the school district could still have co-ed. Of course, they could still have boys and men. But the idea is that all students would have a fair opportunity for a spot on a roster, a championship, a scholarship, that we're not going to enable one group because they maybe have some differences at the expense of another group. And so that's what we want all students to have an even playing field. In fact, that is the name of the bill, SB 140, the Even Playing Field Act.
You've got the guy, Will Thomas, I believe his name is, out of Austin, Texas. He's a swimmer. Now he goes by Leah Thomas, and he's made headlines. He's a UPenn swimmer. And, you know, you look at this NCAA law stating basically policy that those transgender players who have completed, I think it's 1 year of testosterone suppression treatment, can compete as women. So there's a battle there, and that's been headline. Does this fuel your fire, your policy-making fire, when you read about Will Thomas's story and
yes,
UPenn parents frustrated with that?
Absolutely. And Leah Thomas ranked 462nd when competing with his male-bodied physique, 462nd in the men's team, in the men's ranking. He's now number 1 in the women's ranking. So you can see the difference. And even after testosterone suppression, depending what category, but 10 to 12% advantage, even after multiple years. You know, for some things it might only be a 5 or 7% advantage. But still, that advantage creates an unlevel playing field. And you remember FloJo, Florence Griffith Joyner?
I do.
In track and field? Now, she still today holds the world record in the 100-meter, 200-meter. FloJo, as we called her, as our beloved athlete, American, the fellow who is ranked 5,606 in the men's ranking, has tied her record. 5,606 in the men's ranking ties her record. So you can see the vast difference. And, you know, our dear Lydia Jacoby, who just won the gold medal, as the difference in the speed, the American who won the gold medal in the men's was 7.5 seconds faster. So there's such a difference. And, you know, fractions of a second win a race. And here's the bottom line. So somebody might say, well, you know, we're hearing about this in the lower 48, but it's not really happening here. Well, it's beginning to surface here. And I was contacted by coaches and parents and students. So why should we wait until it actually bumps some young women out of an opportunity? We can see what's happening, and we can take care of it now so that a cohort of young women don't lose out. And I tell you, when a girl in middle school, early high school decides to get serious about sports and really go for it, it is a sacrifice. And it's a lot of hard work, and they give up a lot of other things to do it. And so if they're going to go down that path, they want to know that they've got a good shot at being a winner. And what we're going to do if we don't set a policy is young women are going to hesitate, and we're not going to have as robust of a program. But the real, if you take it all the way out, if you play it all the way out, what's happening, some coaches around the country have talked to me about this. Think of the UPenn situation with the male-bodied athlete taking number 1. Now that team, UPenn, is competing against other universities and college-level teams. What are those other coaches on those other teams? What are they going to, where they don't have a rule, like my bill is proposing, those coaches are hired to take their teams to victory. So that now they know next year, okay, we're going to have to compete against this Leah Thomas. We're going to need to recruit someone that can compete against that level. So what you will have is coaches will start recruiting male-bodied athletes if we don't take care of this. And what that does, for everyone that's recruited, a female-bodied athlete loses a slot, loses an opportunity. You could conceivably, if we don't draw a line and say, female sports are for female-bodied athletes only, you could conceivably eventually have a girls or women's team filled with all male-bodied athletes. And
can you imagine that? Who would have thought that could happen? We're talking with State Senator Shelley Hughes, Senate Bill 140, on transgender limitations. We're going to talk about how you can help. If you want to weigh in, if you want to be part of the legislative process, you can at least monitor it online, and we'll get her perspective. Also, has she been challenged? Has she been threatened? Has she been heckled from national groups like what we see with PETA and the Iditarod? We'll ask that question next. Stay with us. Tom Anderson Show.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We are back. We're talking with State Senator of the great state of Alaska, Republicans, Shelley Hughes. Mat-Su Anchorage is her district. It's a big district, and lots of parents, voters, constituents. She has Senate Bill 140. She delineated what it means and why she sponsored it last segment. And I want to get into now talking about why people are, and I know you can't speak, Shelley, for the mindset of someone else, but you're getting picked on. There are national groups. I don't know if it's blurred between local or national. I also want to get into how the public can help. My presumption is people listening, and we'll make a YouTube video of this as well and give information on how to connect. Now, after the bill passes, it'll be after the fact, but it's at least informational. Because if you look up, Shelley, transgender issues and news, I'm looking at Pennsylvania, I'm looking at Texas, Boise, Idaho. Across the line, this is in the news, whether it's from legislation like yours, legislation opposing legislation like yours, or because someone's getting picked on either way. A school may be getting picked on because of a transgender rule, or a transgender student may get picked on, which you're not condoning. So why don't we get into the sizzle first? Are any groups coming at you?
Yeah, I've gotten some pretty hateful emails, and I understand. And one of the things I would encourage someone who has any question, actually on either side of this issue, is to listen to the hearing on March 6th in the Senate Education meeting. Just Google Alaska State Legislature and you can find it, because we really laid out a case. And one of the things I said right out of the gate in my opening remarks is that I care and value every individual, every person, including someone who might identify as transgender. I am not transphobic, and what this bill is about is to ensure that there's an even playing for all student athletes. And but if you'd read the emails coming in, you wouldn't think that. And so they've been a bit ugly, and I know that certain communities are pretty spun up about this. I know that there are some coming in from within the state, but I'm not surprised at all if some are coming from out of state. You can't always tell with an email. But I would hope the support for doing this common sense legislation would come in from within the state, because we need to make our policy decisions as Alaskans. And yet, at the same time, Tom, it is a pretty bipartisan thing. There was actually a Protect Women's Sports Act that was introduced in Congress a few years ago that was a Democrat and Republican did together. Now, it didn't move through, but it signals that there is support. And I don't know, if we were to do a survey of Alaskans, I would guess it would be 75-80% of Alaskans would think this is the right thing to do. So this does cross partisan lines, but there's some that are pretty spun up about it right now, and I understand that, but they're misinterpreting what this does, because an athlete who considers themselves transgender would still be able to participate in sports on an even playing field that matches the type of body they have, whether it's a male-bodied athlete or a female-bodied athlete. So just want to get that out there, and I do need people to weigh in. Because what happens, Tom, you have people that maybe have a special interest on a subject like this, and so they get their group very active. And at one point, we were receiving more emails against the bill than for it. And part of it is because they're very passionate, and a lot of other Alaskans who agree with the policy, they're busy living their lives, right? And it's not an issue that's at the forefront of their mind. So we need more balance. We need to hear from Alaskans, and they can email senate.education@akleg.gov. I'll say that again. It's senate.education@akleg.gov. And I'd also like them to email me so we can make sure that things do get entered on the public record. And you can Google me and find my Senate email, but I'll say it as well. It's senate.shelley.hughes@akleg, and that's Shelley with an EY. So we need actually people to send those emails this week. And the reason is Saturday morning at 10 a.m., there's going to be a public hearing on this bill. We expect it to be a bit controversial and a lot of testifiers. There will be people very much opposed to it, so we need to hear from people that are very much in support of it. And that's at 10 a.m., and if you go to my Facebook page, that's probably I'll give the phone number, but we'll put the emails and the phone numbers on my Facebook page as well, so you'll be able to go if you don't have a pen or pencil right now. But the phone number for calling in is 907-586-9085, and that it's good to get online maybe a little before 10 a.m., and I would tell you there will be a lot of people online. So have something to do while your phone is on hold. You can multitask and wait till your name is called. And you'll only have 2 minutes, I believe. And if you do it in less than 2 minutes, the committee really appreciates it. And I encourage people to be very respectful, not to use hateful language against people who might have an opposing view. Just stay calm and state clearly their position on the bill. But we need people to line up to call on Saturday morning as well as write those emails.
What's I guess the counter is the right term. What's the counter? Are they saying that you're being discriminatory? Are they saying that it's fair that a guy competes against a female? What's the rationale? And is it the athlete that is calling you, or is it a parent or just an advocate?
It seems to be more advocates or people who maybe know someone who's a transgender individual, and they're trying to support them, and they care about that person. So I understand they're trying to protect them, but the point of it is that person can still compete and on a level playing field. But if we allow them on a girls' team, then the girls are robbed of that. On all the gains we won in getting Title IX past 50 years ago will be eroded. So you're right. They will try to use the argument that we're discriminating against transgenders, but this is not true. The current situation would be a gross discrimination against women and girls. They will also try to say it's an invasion of privacy, but already schools and employers collect certain information. This would not be waved out in front of anyone. We're talking about the biological sex at birth as on an original birth certificate, and it's not going to be waved out to the public. And the schools already collect information about, whether a child has hearing loss or a heart condition, those kind of things, and it's all protected, medical information that's protected. They will also talk about equal protection. They try to use the equal protection clause, that we all have an equal opportunity. But that one, it doesn't hold water because it's all about the physical attributes, and that has been upheld in the courts. So again, those on either side of the issue, listen to the hearing on March 6th. Oh, Tom, we had incredible testimony. We had coaches from around the country. We had athletes who faced this situation. We had a transgender woman who spoke in favor of the bill. Very, very fascinating testimony. So, and we had a couple of attorneys who are dealing with what's happening in some of these other states. And we're going to bring them back probably next week or the following when we have the final hearing to respond to some of these questions as far as discrimination right to privacy, equal protection clause. But all of those things can stand up, and court precedent has proven that.
Shelley, I have heard, and we're about out of time, talking with State Senator Shelley Hughes, Senate Bill 140 on transgender competition in Alaska, in female sports particularly, is the highlight. And I've heard about the addition of bathrooms, and that's not going to be part of the narrative, is it, that the transgender can only go to their biological at birth bathroom?
No, bathrooms have nothing to do with this. However, I do know that the situation with UPenn, with the transgender woman Leah Thomas, that has become an issue because it's made some of the women in the locker room very uncomfortable. But our bill has nothing to do with that. It's just who can participate, who can sign up and be in a girls and women's team. It needs to be a female-bodied athlete if this bill were to pass.
State Senator Shelley Hughes, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much for spending 2 segments with us and delineating this. We're going to put the notes in our YouTube video channel, and we'll post that later today so folks, you can connect if interested. Shelley, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, can you include the email addresses and phone number?
Absolutely. We'll put all that in when we get that video done. Folks, we're going to sign off. Enjoy your Thursday. Drive safe out there, and God bless.